Good evening and welcome to Colorado Mesa University. My name is John Marshall. I have the honor of serving as president here. Tonight we get to be part of a special conversation put on by the Davis School of Business. You know, at our best at CMU, we represent a community of scholars and practitioners, and that blending is what we're going to really dig in and celebrate tonight between scholarship and practitioners. But of course, that's all only made possible through the support of friends in the community, like Matthew Burgess, our market president of Vector Bank. Matthew?
Thank you, John. My name is Matt Burgess, and I'm the president of the market for Grand Junction for Vector Bank. With me this evening is Laura Smith, Spencer Vivian, and Simony Massey, also of Vector Bank. Vector Bank is part of Zions Bank Corporation, which is a publicly traded company. We have about 10,000 employees, and we're honored and proud to help underwrite or sponsor this particular event. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to thank Robin Brown, president of the foundation, for kind of connecting us, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Matt. So tonight we of course also are able to offer this conversation through the leadership of our faculty and faculty leaders like Dr. Carlos Baldo. Dr. Baldo, thank you for your leadership and your work tonight.
Thanks so much. I would like to thank you all for accepting the invitation to this event. This is the kickoff of the Davis School of Business speaker series. Back in August, I got the opportunity to talk to Ron, and we were talking about initiatives for this academic year, and he mentioned the importance that having a speaker series will have for our school. From that moment, we put ideas together. Then we incorporate the fact that he wants to focus in leaders. Then we said, well, what about leaders and C-suite executives? And then lastly, we also incorporate authors into, and that's the creation of this speaker series. The idea is to have at least one or two of these every semester. And I believe this is going to be an incredible material for the students to analyze and understand the human being behind the executives that we bring in to this event. Thanks so much again, Vectra, for helping and sponsor the event. And I have the pleasure now to introduce to Dr. Nate Perry. He is an associate professor of economics at the Davis School of Business. And also our guest tonight is Paul Rossetti, that I will not say anything about him because he is basically the main entertainment for tonight, and I believe that if I say something, it will be kind of nothing. So please welcome and enjoy.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming, and Paul Rossetti, thank you so much for sitting here with me. And we decided to do this in a really casual format. Instead of having a speaker come up and have to prepare a speech, we're just going to have a conversation, like a little podcast discussion, and learn about Mr. Rossetti's career, the choices he made to get where he's at in his career, to give insight to students as to the randomness or planning that goes into this type of career, to learn about private equity. So Mr. Rossetti, if you don't mind, we're not going to introduce you because we're going to learn about you through this whole discussion. I'd like to start with your career at American Securities that started in the 90s. Can you tell us about what you did, how you got on there, what your role was, what private equity is for people who may not know, and we can just start from there.
Sure. So private equity is a fascinating field that I've been working in since the late 80s. American Securities was started in 1994. Today it's a $7 billion fund we're managing. I was a partner there from 97 until 3 or 4 years ago when I started phasing back. And now they call me a senior advisor, which is like being vice chairman, which you have no responsibilities except for showing up when you want to, and they ask you questions and ask you to opine on something when it seems convenient.
How do I get a senior advisor, John?
Well, you have to work at it for 30 years, and then they finally do that for you.
Okay, so you were at American Securities for 20 plus years, right? So what was your primary role there? I mean, did you move throughout the company? Did you have one primary role? Kind of tell us about what you were doing there.
Sure. So I came in as a partner. Two of my friends started the firm, and I joined at the day the Fund 2 was initiated. And so my job as a partner was to find investment opportunities and to work with the portfolio companies. And I'm a big proponent of private equity because I think it's the absolute best ownership structure and governance structure that exists today. If you have a owner-operator, their opportunities are limited because they have a small vision. If you're a public company, you have a lot of directors who are really not that engaged with the business. In the private equity world, we own a controlling interest in the company. We are all investors in the fund and in the company. We are the directors along with management team and some outside directors. And we show up, we care, we're engaged. And so our job is to make those companies better. If you think about the business model, if we buy a company and it has a certain value, and 5 years later it's the same company, it's got the same value. And so have we made money for our investors? No. If we do what people think we do, which is rip out a bunch of the infrastructure, fire a bunch of people, pile a bunch of debt on it, and then try to sell it to somebody, that doesn't work either, because anyone who would buy it would be equally intelligent. So the only way we are successful for our investors is to make the business more valuable. And the way we do that is by engaging with the management team. We bring a bunch of very world-class executives and resources to the business, and we make that business a better business by working with the management team, bringing world-class expertise and growing that business. And we tend to hold our businesses for 6 or 7 years, and then if things work out well, we sell them for more than we bought them for.
So you get to engage with all these different businesses in a lot of different fields. I looked on the website and there's, tons of companies listed that you guys engage with. So you don't have to be an expert in each of these fields. How do you manage so many companies as a private equity firm without being able to be an expert in every realm that these companies engage in?
And that really is the heart of the question. We invest in businesses that are market-leading businesses. These teams are very successful. They're normally number one in their industries. And we invest in the business, we sit down with the management team, and we try to tell them how to do it better. You can imagine what a challenge that could be. And so the way we do that is that we have our own portfolio of world-class experts. And we sit down with the management team, we share with them the due diligence we bring, and we have a bunch of standard approaches which yield unique results. So we will bring all of our diligence to the team, we'll sit down, we'll share with them the diligence we've done, and through that diligence we identify opportunities. And so together with the management team we sit down, we talk about how we're going to capture those opportunities that are specific to that company. And what happens is that we can't tell them what we think, we have to tell them what the analysis shows and what the data shows. I find that normally if you disagree with another executive on what you want to do, it's normally because you have different assumptions. And so the way you fix that problem is to evaluate your assumptions, and once everybody has the same assumptions and the same data, you'll come out, if you're all reasonably intelligent people, you come out the same door. And so we normally don't have any trouble in that regard because we share our information, we have world-class experts that they find often can augment their teams and help them achieve their goals. All the executives are investors in the business alongside of us. Most of them have most of their net worth tied up in their business. So this is not an academic exercise. This is very important to them. So the beauty of this is that we're all just focused on one thing, which is making the business better. There's no politics. There's no, who wants whose job or whatever. We're all there together to make the business a better business. And as long as people understand that, they're happy to work with us. It's a great business model, and it rarely fails to do well.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I think private equity getting engaged with these companies, I think of contentious board meetings. And you just narrated something that's totally different, that everybody's on the same page in terms of, it's getting, how do I put this? Getting on the same page for everyone to accomplish their goal, right? So did you have any of these kind of Hollywood-esque bad meetings or, did you have any bad encounters on any of these boards where they did not like an idea and you had to say, listen, this is, anything like that?
I've tried to wash those from my memory banks. There's a whole bunch of those. And of course, one thing one learns is that if you get in bed with difficult people, you're going to have a difficult time. So it became one of our criteria is that we find out early if a management team wants to work with us. If they don't want to work with us, we don't want to buy their business. And we find that out early. But even though people want to work with you, you have a difference of opinions. And that's where it comes back to the point where you have to get common assumptions and common reference points. If I lead a deal, I become the chairman of the board. So I'm sitting there and I walk into this board meeting, I've got all the votes in my back pocket. I can make that board decide whatever I want to decide because I can make that decision myself. But let me go back to I'm going to tell you a bunch of Air Force stories before we're done. This is an Air Force story, which makes my point. I was a young captain pilot. The general came down to see us, he visited us. We went through a big conversation. We told the general what we wanted to do. The general said, sure, we'll do X, Y, Z. Well, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, a month goes by, and nothing happened. So I went to my boss, who was the squadron commander. I said, sir, excuse me, but I thought the general said he was going to do X, Y, Z. And Paul looks at me and he said, Paul, what the general wants, the general doesn't always get. Which means that when he gets on that airplane and leaves, it's back to business as usual if the people there weren't convinced. And so if I walk into a board meeting and I tell them we're going to do this because I say so, the minute I jump on that airplane and leave, it's like I wasn't even there. So you have to convince people that what you want to do is right. And the way you do that is by getting the data and the information together. And it always works if you get the right information together, have the right reference points, reasonable people will look at it and come to the same conclusions. It doesn't work 100% of the time. There are times when you cross swords and you just have to agree to disagree. It's like dealing with your kids, right? Sometimes sometimes you just have to say, do it because I say to do it. You can talk to you blue in the face, but if they're not going to buy into your reasoning, they're occasionally, you don't want to have to do it. It's a last resort, but it does happen. Fortunately for our business and our business, rarely, because we could pick good management teams to work with.
Great. So you told an Air Force story. I have to ask, can we go back to when you started your undergraduate? You went to the Air Force Academy. What motivated you to go to the Air Force Academy? Then you did a master's in aeronautical engineering, correct? Mm-hmm. And then after that, you did an MBA at Harvard, which seems to me a total shift. So, and I want to give some context for asking this. We've got a lot of students in this room. I have students in my office all the time, and they think they've got this plan for their life, and they're 20. And I always tell them, I said, great, this is a great plan, but I'm old enough now that I've seen all sorts of randomness in people's career paths, and you need to be nimble, and you might change your mind. So I'm curious with you, how much of your career path was planned and you knew exactly where you were going, or how much of it was random and you were just open to opportunities and ideas?
Well, from the time I was little, I wanted to fly, and I don't remember how that got into my mind. But by the time I got to high school, I decided I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy because I knew I could go fly from there. And I also was looking for the biggest mountain to climb that I could find. And it seemed to me that was the biggest challenge. Of course, I had no idea what I was getting into because I had no military background. My dad was in World War II, but that's the closest we came. But I had it in my mind I wanted to go and fly. So I went to the academy. I did pick up a quick master's in engineering, went to pilot training, flew for 10 years. And along the way, I got interested in business. And I'm thinking to myself, here I am in the greatest capitalist society that's ever lived on the face of the planet, and I'm not playing. And so I took business classes at night. And of course, if you're in the military, you're always gone. So I missed most of my classes. I was making no progress. And I got to the point where I'd been promoted to major. My good flying days were over. They were always going to become management. Actually, I was scheduled to go to the Army War College in Fort Leavenworth and then to a staff job. So my line flying days were over. So I said, if I'm going to work at desk, I might as well do it in the business world. So I made up my mind that I was going to apply to business schools. And if I got into business school, I was going to get out and go. And if I didn't, then that was God's way of telling me I should stay in the Air Force. So I applied to Harvard and a couple others, got to Harvard and put my papers in, and away I went.
Okay. So you flew fighter jets for
Right.
10 years. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's kind of awesome. We need to hear about it.
It was, it was a great time. I may be different from the other speakers you have, so I'll talk a little bit about that. But so I came out of pilot training in 1972. I got an assignment to an A-7, which is a single-seat, single-engine fighter. The Vietnam War was going at the time. I went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and the guys told us we would never go to Southeast Asia because we weren't the right kind of airplane for the Southeast Asia conflict. As I was getting my A-7 checkout, my wing deployed to Korat, Thailand. I went shortly thereafter, so I did one tour. I was there when the war ended in '73, flying out of Thailand and Laos and Cambodia. Came back to the U.S., got a checkout in the F-4, went back to Thailand for a year, a peacekeeping mission, which was interesting. Came back to the U.S. I got a slot to the Fighter Weapons School, which is the Air Force's version of the Navy's Top Gun, which everybody knows about because of the Tom Cruise movie. So I went through Fighter Weapons School, and shortly thereafter got picked up to fly as an operational test pilot on the F-16, which was a great opportunity for me. So I was the most junior person on the whole F-16 program. They decided to take operational pilots and fly in the test program along with the test pilots because they wanted current fighter pilot input into it. So I remember when I showed up on base at the Flight Test Center at Edwards Air Force Base in California, my boss told me, "Look, Paul, nobody wants you here. You're taking a slot that some test pilot should have. So get a haircut, find a place to live, keep your mouth shut, and things will be fine. Don't make waves." That was on a Friday. On a Monday, they decided that someone had to go to Fort Worth, Texas, to be the pilot interface to the cockpit where they're making, and everyone else wanted to fly. I wasn't flying, so they sent me. So I ended up being the pilot interface to the F-16 cockpit design, which was a great opportunity for me. So that was kind of a fast forward through it, but it was a great career. I had a good time, learned a lot. I think everybody should do a couple years of military experience. Makes you grow up, makes you learn that, the world isn't about you.
Well, everything I know about fighter pilots is from Top Gun, and so I have two important questions for you. A, how many pairs of aviators do you have? And B, how good are you at beach volleyball? Okay, I'm just...
I've got a comment. I'm going to pass on that
Okay.
comment. Yeah.
I got a real question. So I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. So I've had a lot of students who are veterans that come into my class, and exactly what you said, it makes you grow up quickly, right? You learn a lot of skills in the military. You can tell these students are more mature. How much of these military skills or attitude or ethics did you take with you into your career for the next 40 years?
It's actually really helpful. People make comparisons between the military and business all the time. One thing being a fighter pilot teaches is that there is no second place. The idea is to get the job done. You learn very quickly is that there is no second place or third place. You're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. And so you have plan A, you have plan B, you have plan C, and you just keep going through your plans until you find one that works. Who was the boxer that said that your plan is great till you get hit in the nose the first time, then the plan goes out the window? Wars are the same way and business is the same way. And it's interesting. I've had CEOs I've worked with who said, I did step A of the plan, it didn't work, too bad. And then I had other CEOs who say, I did step A, that didn't work. I went to step B, that didn't work. I went to step C, didn't work. Finally, I did step D, and that worked. Those are the guys you want on your team. And that's what you learn in the military is that, you're gonna get the job done no matter what. What you don't learn is you don't learn finance, you don't learn marketing. There's a whole bunch of those things you don't learn. But I think the approach to business and problem solving is very transferable.
So you went and did a Harvard MBA after being in the Air Force. So how was that transition? Was it exciting? Was it this new world? Or what was the experience like?
It was, I got my money's worth out of Harvard because I knew nothing when I walked in the door. And other than the fact I was a little more mature than most of the other students. Learned a lot of technical things, learned a lot about how business works, and it was a great transition to just learning how to think as a business person as opposed to a military person, and plus all the contacts that one makes at the end of the day.
Yeah. So your first job after your MBA was at Bain and Company. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So what did you do for them? You were a consultant, their consultant group. What type of consulting did you do? How did you use those MBA skills to start fine-tuning your eventual venture capital career?
Well, Bain was a great place back then because it was very young. It was going fast and growing fast. And I think they hired me because I was a little more mature than some of the other people. Great experience in learning how to deal with companies, major issues, how to build a project team, how to work with an executive group at the same time. So I learned a lot there. And I think that was kind of the next step in my education, to learn practical applications to what one learns in business school. Bain was a great place, a lot of value add to the clients. And although it took me about a couple years to realize that really wasn't what I wanted to do for my whole life, but after a couple years I felt like I learned what I was going to learn being a consultant, and then it was time to move on to being closer to where the action was.
Okay. Did you do project management? I mean, what kind of consulting was this? Was it, we have a problem with our balance sheet? Was it all over the place?
It was mainly corporate strategy.
Corporate strategy? Okay.
Right. So what the nice thing about that is you work on major issues. You work on big, important issues to the company.
So your next position was with Dyson Kistner Moran Corp., now Apex Partners. So what did you do for them?
Well, DKM, Dyson Kistner Moran, was one of the granddaddies of the buyout business. Charlie Dyson started this in 1954 doing bootstraps. It's a fascinating story. But I decided I wanted to get a private equity business. I heard that they were looking for someone at Dyson Kistner Moran. I wrote a letter to John Moran saying, you don't know me, but if you did, you'd love me. And he bit and ended up hiring me, and I ran the development department there. Basically, it was a private equity firm at the end of the day. So I ran the development group there. The acquisition department was my bailiwick.
So I love that you wrote I forgot his name, Moran? John Moran, a letter saying, hire me, you're going to love me if you knew me. So I try and tell my students all the time, you just need to be bold and go for it. So what inspired you to just go for it? Was this your military experience, or did you just know this was the right job? Why were you bold enough to write that letter?
It just, that was the only way I could, get his attention.
Strategic.
That's the only option I had.
Logical.
Was to write the letter to him.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, say you'd email him probably, I don't know. But.
So this is where you started private equity, right?
Right.
And so did you have different roles in private equity, or what? Can you kind of narrate this next phase of your career?
So I was mainly involved in the acquisitions, but also worked with some of the portfolio companies when they had issues. We were a small team, so I worked with several teams on problem solving and that kind of thing. When they were missing budget or had personnel issues, we would get involved. And I was there for several years, and the reason I left was because the son of the founder, one of the Charlie Dyson sons, took over, and he didn't want to build a business anymore. He was independently wealthy, he grew up with it. He just said, I don't want to rock the boat, I'm fine doing what I got. And so he decided he was just going to hold his portfolio, and then it became less interesting.
Okay. And so did that spur you to transition to your next position?
Right.
Okay. So you go to, let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, Patrikoff Ventures, did I say it right?
Patrikoff Ventures,
Okay.
right. So Alan Patrikoff, who was one of the long-standing venture capitalists, a very successful guy. I had met him, and he'd been trying to tell me that he wanted me to come build a private equity operation alongside his venture business. So I joined him to go do that, which was interesting. I learned very quickly that I was totally in the wrong place initially, because venture is so different from the buyout business, and it really was something that was foreign to me. And I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it, but the venture business was not something I could add a lot of value to. So for those of you who have Audible books, audio books for Audible that you get through Amazon, that was one of our early investments. I actually was on the board of Audible as a seed investor, which was fascinating. That's where I learned that I was in the wrong business, because I was surrounded by venture capitalists who knew this business up and down, and I did not. And so the venture side of the business was something I didn't belong in, and the buyout side of the business was one that we were building, but it was slow going because Alan didn't really understand the buyout business. One of my favorite quotes from Alan was that I brought a deal in and we were going to make 3 times our money. And Alan looked at me and said, "Paul, if we only make 3 times our money, we're going to go broke." So what Alan meant was that in the venture business, every deal's got to pencil out to 10 times your money if it works right, because those make up for the smoking holes where you lose all your money. So if you start out with an expectation of 3 times your money in the venture business, you will go broke if you do that long enough. So he wasn't wrong. It was just a different business model.
Interesting. Okay, so then you moved on to American Securities. So what brought on that transition?
So actually things are going fine at Petrikov, but 2 friends of mine started the American Securities buyout business, and they did a little bootstrap with some friends and family for $85 million in '94. And in '97, they were ready to raise their first institutional fund, and they needed a third partner, and so they called me and asked me if I would join them.
So they started in, their private equity of American Securities was '94, I think, and then you joined in '97?
Right.
So did they start that in American Securities then, your buddies?
They started
Okay.
in '94.
Because American Securities existed before that as a financial institution, but they brought on private equity.
This is the Julius Rosenwald family, which is another fantastic story. He was the Sears Roebuck, one of the Sears Roebuck founders. He was a business partner of Sears. He bought out Sears. Julius Rosenwald was the person who built Sears Roebuck, the Walmart of the whenever decades we're talking about. So that family had a bunch of investment vehicles. They sponsored this private equity fund.
Got it.
Initially.
Okay. So I've got some questions, and I thought about my students when I wrote these. So you think about this career you have in private equity. What's the best advice, given all of your experiences, that you can give to our students who are trying to be successful and get the career that they want? That's a broad question. I know I prepared you for it.
Right. I prepared for it too. I got some cheat sheets, just so I don't get this wrong. So, are we talking life advice or career advice?
All you.
Okay, another Air Force story. So, this is worth the price of admission. So, in a fighter squadron, you're flying early, you're flying late, you're flying all day. You miss a lot of meals. So every squadron has a snack bar. And so you end up eating more than you like to think out of the snack bar. Every pilot has duties in addition to being a pilot. You can be a security officer, weapons and tactics officer, admin officer, all these different things. The most junior pilot becomes a snack bar officer. And his job or her job is to keep the snack bar stocked. It really is kind of the least important job in the squadron. So there's 2 ways to be snack bar officer. You can say to yourself, this is snack bar officer. So I'm going to do a good job, but I'm not going to kill myself. And when I get a good job, I'm really going to go for it. Or you could say, look, this is all I got. This is my job. I'm the new guy. I'm going to do the best job I can do. So I was a squadron admin officer, which meant I was like the commander's staff guy. And so if he was there, I was there. After the flying was done, everyone was gone. He and the other senior officers would sit around, have a beer and talk, and they'd invite me in since I had to be there anyway. And occasionally everyone would switch jobs. And so I'd be sitting in these meetings when the bosses were figuring this out, and inevitably the conversation went like this. Oh, Paul, snack bar officer, time to him and move on. What are we going to do with Paul? And either it was like, he did a lousy job being snack bar officer. How can we give him a more important job? How can we trust him with something more important? We couldn't even be snack bar officer and do a good job. Or Paul did a great job being snack bar officer, sharp kid, let's give him something better to do. You can see where this is going. And those people who said, I'm going to do an okay job, look, if you're not doing your A job and you think you're doing a B job, you're doing a C job. That's just the way it works. And so those guys who did the C job never got a good job, and they never figured out why they couldn't get a good job. Moral of the story is, no matter what you're doing, you just got to do the best you can do at it. And that's the key to success at the end of the day, is doing the best job you can do all the time. And, and that will pay off for you in the long run. I think it's like building your own brand. If you say Apple Computer, Microsoft, Nike, Coca-Cola, Sony, something jumps into your mind. It's a brand. You know how to think about brands. And Professor Baldo, I know, Dr. Baldo is into branding and personal brands. You have a personal brand, and every day of your life you're building that brand. And whether it's a small thing or a big thing, you're building your brand. And think about what you want your brand to be. Do you want to be a reliable brand? Do you want to be a cheerful brand? Do you want to be a team player brand? Do you want to be a strong individual player brand? Think about what your brand, you want that brand to be, and build that brand. And believe me, it sticks with you for your whole life. I can tell you lots of stories about how small events come back long afterwards to impact your life, from people and events you never thought you would see again or would be important to you. And another thing I would say about career building is emotional intelligence. Like, we all know what IQ is. I'm sure most of you know what EQ is. EQ is how you deal with people. How sensitive you are, your interpersonal skills. Another story. So you all know what the Myers-Briggs is. It's a personality exam. So in American Securities, 10 years ago, someone had the bright idea, we all should take the Myers-Briggs and see what it showed. So we had a consultant, we took the Myers-Briggs, we had a big offsite, and this consultant would sit down, and I remember the first thing he said was, okay, he called off 6 names. Of course, he had the results of our Myers-Briggs, we did not. He called off 6 people, say, come up and sit in front. So he said, okay, so think about this. You had the worst week of your life. You're exhausted. You worked your butt off. You're drained. It's Friday. What are you going to do to recharge your battery? And it went everywhere from, I'm going to walk my dog on the beach, to I'm going to throw a dinner party for 30 of my best friends. Now that was the question of who's the introvert and who's the extrovert. And he went through this line by line, issue by issue, metric by metric. Call 6 people up. Here's the issue. What are you going to do? And it was astounding, the difference in people. Where I'm going with this is that, they say treat other people the way you want to be treated. Really, that's not really true. You want to deal with them the way they want to be treated, which is not the way you want to be treated. And so just recognize, to me, the light bulbs went off. Like, wow, I had never had any idea that everybody was so different. Then I understood why one of my partners would walk in, sit in my office, and start chatting for 30 minutes, because he was an extrovert, and that's how he solved problems. He just started talking, and if you talk long enough, he would figure it out. And so that opened my eyes to how different we all are and how hard it is to understand how to deal with people. So we all analyzed our clients and our CEOs, said, okay, now, Joe, what is he? How's he fit in this thing? And then we try to figure out how to work with our CEOs better. But recognizing that difference in people and really trying to figure out how to deal with people effectively and realizing it's an issue, I think, is really important. That's working with people, getting things done with people is just so hard to do. And if you don't really focus on how they're different from you, you miss a lot of those opportunities.
What life advice? So you gave career advice, which is kind of life advice, but do you have additional less career-oriented advice you'd give any students in here?
Well, there's the classical one of find what you're passionate about, and there's just no way around that. Find what really makes you happy and turns you on, and it makes such a big difference. And by the way, that's going to change as you go through life. I started wanting to fly, then I decided, no, I really want to go into business, and now I'm into climate change related things. So what you want to do will change, as you go through your life. So that's absolutely number one. Another story, one more story. Well, maybe last story. So when I was first in the Air Force, and these are Air Force stories because that's when I was learning all these things. So I got assigned to a base, and you started meeting people, and you talk about different places people were assigned. And you talk to somebody, I was at base A, it was a disaster, it was awful, worst place, nothing to like about base A. Okay, check mark, don't go to base A. And then you talk to someone else, I was at base A, it was great. We did this, we did that, wonderful assignment. And that goes on and on. And of course, and pretty soon you find out, it's not the base, it's the person. And so you can decide to be happy, or you can decide to be unhappy. And anything in your life, there's something not to like about it, and there's something to like about it. And you can make up your mind whether you're going to take a look at the bright side and the glass half full, or you're going to be the glass half empty kind of person, where I would suggest you come out on that. But it's a personal decision. It's not like you're a victim. And you see people who have horrible injuries, who really have been treated badly in life, big smile on their face. It's all up to you whether you want to be a happy person or an unhappy person. And I think that's something for you to make up your mind. The other thing I would say is, we've seen people pushing your boundaries, pushing your comfort boundaries. It's easy to live within your comfort zone, but you miss so much. And if you can just push yourself outside your comfort zone. I'm not saying I got to go skydiving, but push yourself outside your comfort zone. So I did decide, I have a fear of heights, so I decided the way I was going to fix that was learn to skydive. So I actually went on exchange to the French Air Force Academy, and I went through their parachute program, learned to jump there, and then I spent 10 years skydiving after that, after I went through the Air Force Academy program. And I finally jumped till I realized it was time for me to hang on my parachute. But I'd encourage you to just push the boundaries, do things you're not comfortable with, and you'll be glad that you did.
Great advice. You have a foundation.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Yes, we started the foundation. As I phased back out of American Securities, one of my sons-in-law works for the Rocky Mountain Institute, which is a green energy think tank in Boulder. And I was looking for my next big thing, and Mike suggested that I think about climate change. So I started reading about climate change, and the magnitude of the challenge and the significance was obvious. And so we decided that was going to be my next big thing. So we started the Family Foundation. We're focused on regenerative agriculture and reforestation because it's relevant for the Rocky Mountain West for our community. You don't need new technology to make it happen. And it's at a scale where we thought we could be additive and make a difference.
Great, thank you.
And so we're doing grants, we're doing studies, we give grants to farmers in the Roaring Forks area. We fund organizations who are helping farmers transition. We're also doing for-profit investing as well. We have got investment in several companies to deal with water recycling, sustainable fabrics, reforestation. We've got a company that uses drones to plant trees, which is fascinating. So we're doing grants and for-profit investing as well.
That's amazing. We were hoping to have some questions from students in the audience, so I'm not sure how we're facilitating that, but maybe I'll facilitate it. Who has a question for Mr. Rossetti they'd like to ask?
Well, Mr. Rossetti, I'd like to thank you for your support that you've been giving to the Guardian Scholars. I'm one of them, and I'm thankful for the opportunity I have. This being said, why do you support the Guardian Scholars and people like me?
Well, first of all, part of my job now is to support people who deserve support to move forward their careers. And I think Ron Davis has done just a fantastic job with Garden Scholars and My Future Pathways. And the Garden Scholars program has been so successful. You know, you can choose to help everybody a little bit or a few people a lot. And the Garden Scholars is the best program I've ever seen to help a few people a lot. It makes a big difference in your lives and the lives of your fellow Guardian Scholars. And so I think it's just a fantastic program that I've been really happy to support. And I know there's some thinking that you might do the same kind of program for the community here, a mirror type program. And I really hope that that comes to fruition because it's been such a successful program for us in the Vail Valley. I think it'd be great for the people here as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience?
I'd also like to thank you for your time and coming to speak at the school. I really appreciate it. I know everyone here really appreciates that. I can tell that you're obviously a very highly motivated individual. You have been for a very long time. What I want to know is something I struggle with is having this flow of becoming highly motivated and then suddenly not so highly motivated and you're just stuck there until something knocks you out and then you're as highly motivated as it gets. In your experience, how would you recognize that you're sort of not motivated and getting back to that high motivation so that you can go out and do the things that you want to do?
You know, that happens to all of us. You're not always on the top of your game all the time. It's going to happen. And I think one has to just sit and, you know, get some private time and some quiet time and think about what's important to you. I like to write things down, you know. So I'll take a white pad and I'll write pros and cons. What are my objectives? What's valuable to me? What's important? What are my goals? And I'll write it down and think about it for a while. And, you know, and ultimately, your values will come through, you know. And you know, it's not like no one's demotivated. You're always motivated to do something. You know, they say that you're never not motivated. It's just a question of what are you motivated to do. And at some point in time, you might be motivated to kiss off whatever it is whatever I had going and do this, and that's going to last for a while, you know. But that's just part of the program. You know, I think we all go through that. It's just you'll come back around, but everybody's got their own way of thinking about it. But you also think about, like, where am I going to be long term, right? It's easy to say, okay, I'm not motivated to work hard or do whatever now, but where's that going to put me 30 years down the road? And if you think about that, then, you know, you'll come back around. But it's totally normal, by the way, it's totally normal.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm the governor. Go ahead.
You do look like Polish. But anyway, not to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but well, first I want to start by saying thank you, Mr. Rossetti, for coming to us and speaking to all the students here. I speak for us all, and we say thank you for giving us your time tonight. But my question would be, it seems like you're a man that's endured a lot of success in your life, and you're well traveled through, you know, the military and your business successes. But I want to bring up the topic of adversity and kind of what was the most adversity you had to face in your professional career, and kind of what are some steps that you took to overcome it?
We learn from our mistakes. That's absolutely true. So I'm going to leave my personal things aside here. But as far as the business career goes, I've had some investments that have gone badly. And you just torture yourself when you go through those things. And you learn the mistakes you made that got you into that position. Those are stamped on your brains. Some of the biggest mistakes I've made is, you know, investing alongside people who are not good people. Back to this issue of people that don't want to work with you, they're hard to work with, and you just knock yourself out trying to figure out how to get out of those things. I think you have to take the position that how I got here is a sunk cost. I can't go back and change that. Now I just got to buckle down and do the best I can. And sometimes the best outcome is not. There are no good outcomes. And that's when it gets depressing, right? When you look at all the potential outcomes and none of them are good, and that's going to happen. And I guess the only bright spot about that is that the scars you get from those hopefully stick with you, so you don't make those mistakes again at the end of the day. But you're absolutely right. I once wanted to have a you go to these conferences and people have these sessions about how great we are and what wonderful deals we've done, all that. I wanted to have a session where we all talked about our mistakes. I want to get my friends said, look, we're going to have a session, build this like our biggest failures. And everyone's going to come to hear that because no one wants to admit their failures. And it was a sellout crowd. And we all talked about our worst disasters. But thanks for the question.
I'd also like to thank you for your time, with the students and everything. A common theme in my entrepreneurship class right now is time management. Can you tell me a little bit of how you deal with time management and how that applied into your life and throughout your career?
Yeah, time management is really an important skill. There's those 4 boxes, right? Urgent and variations of urgent and important. And what I do is, because I'm not that organized, I came up with a form that I actually made that has all the different categories of things I need to do, and I write them down in there, and then I use that to guide my time management. I look and say, okay, I'm going to take one out of this block. Of course, the important, urgent things were at the top of the list, but then there's all those important but not urgent things you never get to. And so what I do is I have this sheet and all the categories of things I need to do, and I go through and I pick things out from each category and say, okay, today I'm going to do those things. Or today I'm going to plan to do, I'm going to put on my calendar to plan to do these other things. So if I don't do that, then I'm a mess.
Thank you very much.
Hello, I'd also like to thank you for your time. Like most of us in the business program, at some point in our careers, we'll either be working for, alongside, or even in charge of other people. Do you have any advice from your experiences and the skills you've learned for managing others, motivating others, and just working with people in general?
That is the real challenge in leadership. And one thing the Air Force Academy is very good at is teaching leadership. And I think getting people to work towards a goal that you've got set together as a team is one where I find the best way of doing this collaboration. I like the coach approach when you can do it. I like to collaborate. Once again, if people don't believe in what you're trying to do, they're not going to do it, right? So if you can collaborate with people and get everybody on the same page and to agree, then you're doing really, really well. And what I like to do is, and it depends on who you're dealing with. If it's a project team, then setting a goal and setting guidelines, policies, and say, okay, here's the goal, here's the guidelines. You guys go do it and let me know how it goes. If you need help, come back and see me, which is the absolute best way of doing it. And that's one of the challenges of going from being a doer to a manager, is taking your hands off. And first of all, you have to learn how to give guidance, right? It's one thing just to go do it yourself, but actually you have to think forward, like, okay, if I'm going to turn this loose to these guys, I got to think about where do we want to be, how are we going to get there, and what's the guidance I'm going to give them. That takes some thinking. So you have to get ahead of the game to do that. So if you can get people to live within the guidelines, go for the goal, and you can take your hands off enough to let them go do it, and maybe make a few mistakes on the side, as long as they're not fatal, you're doing fine. I think that's the best way of doing it. But it's once again, it's very situation specific. Right? Once again, it's knowing your people and knowing how they respond. Some people like that, and some people want you to say, do this, 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 and this. Some people want that. If you turn them loose and just say, here's a goal, go do it, they're lost. And so you have to know your people as well. So one thing I didn't want to mention that I didn't tell you about yet, have you seen the Admiral McCraven video of his commencement speech at the University of Texas? McCraven was the commander of the Navy SEALs. So he gave a commencement speech at the University of Texas. It's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it, you gotta go see it. It's 15 minutes. It's 10 things to do to be successful. It has to do with leadership. And this guy is fantastic. And of course, he's the commander of the Navy SEALs. How bad could he be, right? But it's a great presentation. I really suggest you go see it if you want to talk about how to be a leader.
Well, I have a question for you. One of the true sweet spots of Colorado Mesa is first-generation students. That have grown up in families where haven't had a lot of life experiences and learning things around the dinner table or being those kind of things. What kind of advice would you give to people that just first time to go to college and really confused about what they want to do? The one thing you really did talk a lot about, the common theme was values. You can have good values, but how do you do it when you feel like you don't have all the opportunities that a lot of other people might have had in life? Because that's really the sweet spot of this university.
Yeah, we all need mentors. No matter who you are, you need a mentor. And I think finding mentors, and I'm sure the professors here are very happy to mentor the students. And I would take full advantage of using them as mentors and find someone that you resonate with and ask them to be your mentor. And I'm sure they'd be more than happy to do it. And I wouldn't be shy about it. And maybe more than one. And you've got the Guardian Scholar group here. I'm looking at Susie. They're also here to be helpful to you. So I think it's the resources are here, and I wouldn't be shy one bit about reaching out to those people.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rossetti. I appreciate it. I think everyone else does too.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks again for being here, for attending to our kickoff speaker series. I would like to now invite you to have a little bit of refreshment courtesy of our friends of Vectra that have sponsored this event. And hopefully we will see some of you again on the second event that we are starting to prepare by tomorrow. So thanks so much again, and have a good night.
Okay.